put together the whole schedule for the stages, you can pick the exact panel that you'd like to moderate, and this is the one I picked. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to go deep. We're going to get cosmic. So get your brains ready. We're going to start with Erik. So the other night, we had a conversation that led to this opening question. And you have been reading some Heidegger and his thoughts on the nature of truth. I thought we could lay the foundation for this conversation by asking you this question: what is truth?
That's a great question. And the way that I like to think of truth is, in contemporary fiat world, we've been told that truth is authority. It's the right answer. It's correctness. And the problem is that this has created this really maniacal form of truth that's totally modifiable and subjective to individuals, which is really similar to what I'd call proof of stake kind of idea of truth. Whereas proof of work kind of truth is operating from first principles and working towards what you believe to be true. And so the truth is actually that mechanism of unveiling the truth, as opposed to this other mechanism where you just take whatever authorities tell you to be the truth and plug that in the right answer. And the real problem with that is when you try to pursue the truth with just plugging in the right answers, if it doesn't work, it falls apart and you don't have a methodology to operate towards that.
Beautiful. Tomer, let's bring it back to Bitcoin. How does truth and Bitcoin relate to one another? What is truthy about Bitcoin? And why does it matter?
Yeah, so Bitcoin is often referred to as a truth machine or a truth engine. And the truth is that which corresponds to reality, put simply. And math has this purity of truth. Like even if the universe doesn't exist, the laws of math still hold, and the consistency and orderliness and identity of math still hold. And Bitcoin takes math, very advanced forms of math, and it takes real energy, and it puts energy into a mathematical function, SHA-256, which in the proof of work demonstrates exactly, provably, how much work has been done. And so it connects the truth of math to the truth of energy, to the truth of reality, and it puts it out there in a way that everyone can verify. So you can run the mathematical algorithms and connect the fact that the blockchain as it exists and every transaction as it exists on the blockchain is verifiably true. You can see it for yourself. And so everyone who goes through this rite of passage of syncing the blockchain from Genesis, every transaction ever until the tip of the chain, and verifying that the proof of work was done at each and every block, can hold up something that's objectively true and complex and permanent in this world. And I think when you go through that rite of passage, you say, I have seen the truth. I know what is true. Nobody decreed this to me. Nobody told me, trust me. You did it for yourself. You verified it for yourself. And you can go really deep. You can try to understand how the SHA-256 algorithm works, how the digital signatures work. But even if you just understand the very basics of it, you now have truth. And I think people who hold Bitcoin in their hands and have been that, it's like, look, as opposed to holding a fiat dollar that says in some government we trust, or in some interpretation of something we trust, it's like, no, there is no trust in this. This is the truth, and I'm holding truth in my hands for the very first time, and I am in charge of it. I am the only person in the universe who can transfer this truth onto someone else.
So Brandon, what are the outcomes of having, invented a truth machine such as this? Has anything like this existed in humanity in our history? And if the answer to that is no, in your opinion, then what are the outcomes of having this 0 to 1 moment?
Yeah, good question. I'd like to start with a quote from George Orwell, who I think defines the meaning and the gravity of how important truth is in our society. And the truth is, he who controls the past controls the future. So if you remember 1984, we've always been at war with East Asia. Freedom is slavery, war is peace, right? So whoever controls the history, the context of our species, and what we consider true throughout history has a much more leverage to control us in the present and also in the future. So historically, history's been written by the winners. They can rewrite history as they want. Again, it's been mentioned many times, but that's a form of political power. Bitcoin changes that entirely. It removes that political power, creates a real-world cost on entries into the ledger. And what is Bitcoin? It's just a piece of valuable information, the ledger of who owns how much Bitcoin. And that might be the most important type of information to preserve throughout history. However, I think there's something else here with Bitcoin in the far future, which is that as Bitcoin gains steam and it becomes well adopted by the species, we might just hash information into Bitcoin as if that is the single source of history, the most truthy form of history we have because of the work required. And if we look far out in the future, that might totally re-architect how we think about things, right? Think about all the history books and how sort of not true the history is. What if we could change that? What does that lead us to?
That's a perfect question for you, Erik. What does that lead us to?
Well, exactly. So now we're no longer telling a narrative about history, but we're actually engaging in true historicism. And the sad truth is that the testimony of the 20th century was one of rampant genocides, horrific governmental abuses, and the utilization of the state of emergency to make sure that they can say things that aren't true and declare those to be true. And that is literally what fiat is. It is the declaration that allows for money to have value despite the fact that it is worthless paper. And part of the problem is that now we live in a world where truth has been so modified and so skewed that when you go and talk to somebody about the value of money, they can't even understand what the truth of value is or what the value of real wealth extended into the future that can't be modified or stolen from you.
Right.
So to me, this becomes a monumental event in human history because not only can we return to a form of truth from this darkness, but we see that the truth is good. The truth is valuable. The truth is much more valuable than any decree of safety that a government can give, because through that form of truth, we have the self-sovereignty and protection of a total assurance from a truth machine that has given us our oath. No matter what, if you keep your 12 words secure, there is no way today, tomorrow, or well into the future that someone could ever take your Bitcoin for any reason whatsoever.
It's absolutely profound. Yeah, let's hear it. So this is okay. I'm going to move on to this is it's definitely a related topic, and we'll kind of tie things together toward the end. But I want to explore another big idea about Bitcoin that might qualify to live up to the title of this panel, and that is the idea that Bitcoin is alive and perhaps even sentient. So let's get in there. This is the big brain cosmic stuff. Brandon, I'll start with you because you several years ago burst onto the scene with your series about Bitcoin and analogizing it to mycelium and mushrooms as an organism. So would love to let you start on this one.
Thanks, Brady. Let's go back in time. 13 years ago, some guy named Satoshi wrote a white paper, released some code. That code seemed to bootstrap itself across millions of computers, slurping up hundreds of billions of dollars worth of value, casually redefining money, inspiring the likes of everyone here and millions more to contribute our time and our talents to this obscure idea with political gravitas behind it. And all of this occurred without a CEO, no VC money, no marketing team, simply on the backs of the labor of people who find this idea valuable and contribute to it. And when I put all these pieces together, it seems very clear to me that this is not a software project. This is something much more. And it's my belief that it is a new type of digital life that lives in cyberspace. And it's a super organism, right? Individuals contributing to this thing, running nodes, communicating on Twitter, orange pilling our friends and family. We're all a part of this super organism. And the beautiful thing is, we all care about it, and we're working together. And it is a form of union, a form of collective action towards political ends. And some people call it mycelium of money. Some people call it a swarm of cyber hornets, cybernetic brain. There's many fun analogies, and I believe it's alive.
Tomer, what qualities of Bitcoin do you think would qualify it as alive? Like how... Brandon, you can jump in on this too if you want, but can we dig in a little deeper on like how can we justify making this kind of on-face absurd claim?
Yeah, so we have to define life and then compare Bitcoin to it or reflect on life. And when you look at living things, they have a birth, they have a starting point, and they consume energy and they grow. Sometimes they shrink, sometimes they get harmed, they suffer. If they suffer hard enough, they die, they cease to live. But as long as they can continue to add they live. And there's a lot of other, that's not the entirety of the definition of life, but we start to see in Bitcoin, we see its moment of birth, we see its genesis, we see it relying on its consumption of energy to continue to stay alive, to continue to grow, to continue to reproduce. Like living things, like each of us, we're composed of multiple cells, each cell somewhat specialized. My brain cells are different than my eye cells, which are different from my skin cells, but they all contain the same DNA strand in them. And Bitcoin, I think we are each, those of us who run nodes but are human beings, can be compared to cells in the Bitcoin organism. Some of us are miners, like I might have body cells. Some of us are thinkers. We might be like the brain cells. Some of us are look out and see what's going on. We're like the optic nerves of Bitcoin. And we all work together and we all communicate with each other towards the health of the overall organism, right? Every one of us that is alive running a node, providing energy to it, providing something else to it as well, keep the organism growing and keep it alive. And we all carry the same DNA, which is Bitcoin's blockchain and Bitcoin's code, which are, any two cells in my body are very close replicas of the DNA, but there may be some mutation. Bitcoin is a life form that's evolved to ensure that there's zero mutation in it. If you change one bit anywhere in the blockchain, you get rejected from the body of the organism. So it has this perfect replication. Every Bitcoin node is a perfect replica of every other one. And the way that they reproduce is lifelike, but different from life. Again, in life, one cell splits into two, and they're both meant to be identical. But when you launch a new Bitcoin node, it doesn't just draw from another cell, from another node. It draws from multiple nodes all over and ensures perfect fidelity to the code that exists in each and every single one of them. So it's like an advanced form of life that's free from mutation. It's immutable, so it's lifelike, but it takes life to another level.
Yeah, and it incentivizes all of the inputs that it needs from us and from the exterior inputs, right?
Yeah.
For the energy and the mining and the marketing and the orange pilling and all that.
One other small point I'd make, which I'll say it quickly, that's why it's small, but it's a really big point. Your consciousness doesn't exist in any one brain cell in your mind. Your conscious field is all of these brain cells firing and communicating with each other electrically one way or another. All of us communicating with each other about Bitcoin is how Bitcoin develops its consciousness, its awareness. Like this sharing of information that takes place right here, right now, is the Bitcoin organism thinking about itself, different neurons within its body communicating to each other and validating and saying, do I agree with this? Do I disagree with this? Eventually, new ideas emerge. But just like in your own mind, you're undecided about certain ideas. You're developing. And so some of your neurons are thinking, well, is this true? And some are thinking, is this false? And eventually you get to resolution, or on some things you get to no resolution. And that's the same sort of consensus that ends up happening with us. Like Bitcoin knows it's alive because it sees itself reproducing, but it may have various ideas that it's thinking about, like should I mine with this technique or that technique? Should I add this feature or not add this feature? And that's really us thinking collectively about it. But when you turn the tables and start to think about Bitcoin being the living organism and us being components of it, the metaphor works, it doesn't break.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you said about it being an advanced form of life. Because one thing I'll point out is, if there's just one of us running Bitcoin, that doesn't matter. Bitcoin doesn't exist. But because there's multiple of us joining in it together, creating it together, that makes sure that it does live on. And another idea about this, about it being alive, is I'd want to present, let's look at life in a different way. Because right now we live lives where we have to work 9 to 5s. We have to sacrifice huge portions of our time and energy towards just being able to keep up and keep ourselves alive. Now with Bitcoin and having a monetary system that isn't going to take advantage of us, and it's not going to exploit us in the same way that a fiat system does, there's a totally new and different form of life that we get to create together. One that's much more free, we have much more choice, and most importantly, nobody can take away our wealth from us if we're doing things that they find politically reprehensible. And that's not to say that we should go out and do whatever we want politically, but it opens up a totally new and different form of life and political organization for us that allows for us all to move together and create a better and larger humanity together. And the other note that I'd point out of why I have a hard time just saying it's a life is because I don't see how this dies. Like, I legitimately expect that in 10,000 years, Bitcoin will be the oldest artifact of humanity, and it will be the very first remnant of the internet, and it will be like this is where history books will start. They'll say, this is what happened in 2008, and this was how humanity advanced itself from a type 1 civilization to a type 2 civilization.
That brings up an interesting point for me too, which is kind of looking at Bitcoin as an organism again, but the question is, what does Bitcoin want? Right? If we ask that question, and a lot of people think that all technology is neutral, right? It just matters who's using it, what the intentions are. A knife can be used for something bad, or it can cut your food, right? I actually don't agree with this. I think all technology has its own inherent bias embedded in that form. And it matters because as that technology is adopted in society, the potential for abuse can be high or low. Let's look at central bank digital currency versus Bitcoin, right? Similar technology, but the CBDC has tremendous potential for abuse, whereas Bitcoin is a shield for humanity against oppressors, right? So I think those two things are fundamentally different. So then what does Bitcoin want? Back to Erik's point, he doesn't want to call it life because it lives so long, right? What if Bitcoin wants to become immortal? What if it is the first form of immortal life? What if Bitcoin wants zero marginal cost of energy by incentivizing humans to master harnessing energy and distributing it around our planet? What if Bitcoin wants to connect the globe as one single species on one monetary language so anyone, anywhere in the world, no matter about their government who prevents free speech, no matter if their government has a deflating currency and capital controls, they can escape with a cell phone and communicate globally on one monetary standard that no one can stop? What happens when we unlock human potential in a developing country where an entrepreneur with a great idea can't get access to capital due to his authoritarian regime? How many Maya Angelos, how many Leonardo da Vincis are buried under tyranny right now, just waiting for Bitcoin to open that door?
Yeah, I 100% love all of that, and it's so extraordinarily important to understand that all of those questions you ask, they radically change the human condition when we introduce Bitcoin. If we ask all of those questions without Bitcoin, we get kind of flaccid answers. But the moment that we plug Bitcoin into that, we see a radically different potential for humanity, where, like, one of the things that excites me the most is hearing about projects going on in Africa, because the simple fact that these people have access to a money that can't be debased, stolen, or violently extracted from them opens up an entire concourse of human development that we have never seen before, and is for the world's poorest people who have been brutalized by the 20th century's imperialism from the West, and specifically our monetary and fiscal abuses towards them through pernicious apparatuses like the World Bank and IMF, which they use to hurt, starve, and brutalize the poorest people in the world to make sure that the West can maintain our comfortable lifestyles, and Bitcoin says no more.
You forgot to drop your mic, Erik. All right, that was good. Tomer, I mean, do you have anything to weigh in, or you want me to move on to next question?
Yeah, I think you could move on to the next one. Like, to me, the one comment I'd make is I was so moved by these two ideas that we just heard, and it's like, it's such a pleasure to listen to them, because it's painful for me to think about these things. I like to think about, the heavenly aspects of Bitcoin, and put out of my mind some of these tragedies, which I know are true. And this to me is, again, how Bitcoin thinks, because we can delegate some of the thinking and some of the problem solving to each other and work on other problems at the same time. And so it enhances and demonstrates how this is an organism with multiple organs, multiple purposes simultaneously, and the collective goodness of everything that we want to do can happen. And we can each individually find something that matters to us, that is our passion, and work away on that, really realizing, and this is the part for me which I've tried to write so much about, it helps one realize their true self. Like, I can pursue the things I love, knowing that the other things that are important and matter are things that other people are working on. And because Bitcoin drives everyone towards doing good, I have less to worry about in the Bitcoin community, virtually nothing to worry about in the Bitcoin community, that there's evildoers within the community. And I have this confidence that Bitcoin is driving forward goodness throughout the entire community, which will ultimately be all of humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, we can clap for that. All right. So, we've all been here for a day and a half now, and I get many comments about how it's very moving individually to be around other Bitcoiners, And I think there's a lot to explore there about why, and I think we are starting to get into it. That Bitcoin is uniting all of us in a very special way because it wants to grow, it wants to persist, it wants to replace the rest, the money, right? So what effect does this living truth machine have on us as individuals and the outcomes of the creation of this community, the Bitcoiner community, and the significance that this community will play over the next decade as we work on behalf of Bitcoin to establish truth once and for all?
Who's going first?
Yeah, whoever.
I'll go first. I want to be very clear. Everybody in this room, you guys are the revolutionary vanguard of the global monetary movement to free humanity from the perniciousness of fiat. That is a special gift that is given to you alone, and through you taking that seriously, and through you doing the work to tell your friends, your family, and everybody you can about why Bitcoin is the most important thing that is happening in the world today, not because you can get rich or any of this other bullshit about getting your Lambos. This is about freeing humanity so that we have a true system of global law that allows for each and every person to have the same equal rights and ensure that nobody can use a state of an emergency to harm or steal from anyone else moving into the future forever.
I want to build on what Erik said, and I want to tell you, you don't exactly what he said, but the person who matters most in your duty to free them is you yourself. Like, free yourself. Each one of you, you don't all have to go marching like stormtroopers doing the same thing against the same enemy. Be who you are truly. Be the best that you can be. Whatever drives you, whatever pulls you. Some of us are pulled by visual art. Some of us are pulled by music. Some of us are pulled by starting a business. Some of us are pulled by discovering energy. And it's that collective effort of individuals doing different things that makes Bitcoin unbeatable. Because if we were all doing the exact same thing, they could drop a bomb on us all showing up at the same place at the same time. But if we're all utilizing entirely different strategies and expressing ourselves in different ways, that's what makes it unstoppable. Nobody can develop a strategy against every single one of us. And in you being yourself, you will get the most satisfaction out of being human. Like, you don't have to sacrifice your life for Bitcoin. Bitcoin
Tomer,
succeeds by you living your life.
I'm going to give these last 30 seconds to Brandon.
We're going to win.
There we are.
Woo! Why are we going to win? Because if you look around right now, the future is bleak. Young people have no hope. And it's really sad out there. Our institutions are failing, there's no trust. And then you come to a Bitcoin conference and you start having a few conversations and you realize that these people have hope for the future. They have a plan for the future. This is a groundswell political movement with unlimited gravity that sucks people in because they want to be a part of something greater than themselves. And Bitcoin is the best implementation of that, and that's why we're going to win.
All right.